Wondered how good and evil are biologically imprinted. Everybody knows instinctively what's right and what's wrong. My guest, Professor Paul Zak, analyzes the chemical basis for moral behavior. He uses his research in neuroeconomics to teach us about the biological aspects of good and evil. Welcome, Mr. Zak. The renowned magazine Wired once called you one of the 10 sexiest geeks on Earth.
Well, I tried to show that today by taking my shirt off in public. So.
Yeah, you took your shirt off on stage. Let's see what happened on stage.
Okay. This is, thank you, I appreciate that. This is synthetic testosterone. It's a gel. I'm going to rub it on my shoulders. And about an hour from now, some of this is going to leak into my brain. And when it does leak into my brain, my perspective is going to narrow from the future to the present. I'm going to take more risk. And if I see a social slight, I'm much more willing to engage to cause that person to behave the way I want them to.
Okay, this was you on stage earlier today.
That's right.
That was impressive.
So when this is when we run experiments, we actually manipulate brain chemistry to see how it affects people's behavior. So I thought it was important for the audience to see that not only do we do this in a lab, we do this to ourselves.
Okay, well, yeah, but I can imagine why people think you're the sexiest geek, at least one of the 10 sexiest geeks.
I just turned 50, so I'm happy to take any compliment I can get at this point.
Next to you is Mr. Richard Lamp. He's a Dutch trend forecaster, strategist.
Yeah, strategist, that's right.
You saw Mr. Zak's TED Talk. What did you think of it? What struck you?
Yeah, well, I was very interested in his thought, of course, how you could influence on a sort of chemical basis. Almost your character, I think. Is that really the way you think, like, people's character fundamentally changes because of chemicals, or is it more behavior?
So it's really both, right? So our experiences matter, but also our brains live in this soup of chemicals, and then we're not really aware of it. So I think part of the value of our research is to become more conscious about what our underlying motivations are chemically.
I understand the key in everything is the hormone oxytocin. It's a neurotransmitter. Right. That's the key. We all have it in our systems, and when our levels are raised of oxytocin, we are nicer people, more generous.
More empathic, more loving, right? So we're kind of building those relationships that make life valuable.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a missing part of that equation on the human behavior.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, the longest debate humans have had since humans have been having debates is, are we good or evil?
Yeah.
Of course the answer is both, but oxytocin is that switch, it moves us to the good side.
Yeah. So, but it's oxytocin, that's the key of everything. Everybody has it.
Everybody has it, right.
But do some people have more of it and some people have less of it?
Great question. So in every experiment we've run in 10 years, women release more than men.
Yeah.
And we find that people are more empathic in their personalities, release more than others do. And so there are quite different variations in this, and you see this expressed in their behavior.
Yeah.
So we know women are nicer than men, right?
Yeah.
It's just a fact. Well, now we know why, because they release more oxytocin, they're more socially connected, they're more emotionally connected to people around them.
So is it possible to buy oxytocin somewhere, to become a nicer person? Just go to a shop, buy some oxytocin, and there you go.
So it's a prescription drug, so you can't buy it without a doctor's prescription. But I say hugs, not drugs. So we've shown that touch releases oxytocin. So we will tell, I hugged you earlier before we went on air.
Yeah.
So I hug everybody because that releases oxytocin, connects us to others. And once you've hugged somebody, it's very hard to treat them badly.
Yeah. So a hug, make love, not war. You're basically a hippie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right.
But what happened to the world after the hippies? Because they knew we have to make love, not war, and then all of a sudden everything fell apart? Or didn't they know?
Right, so it's, again, these two sides of our human nature. So sometimes, as I showed in the TED Talk, punishment's the right approach. Someone's really behaving badly, they're in this, I call this evil stage. They need to be punished, they need to be sort of pushed, shut down. And so war sometimes is appropriate, but sometimes the love approach is appropriate too. So the great thing about the love approach is it allows them to build vast social relationships. I mean, there's so much value you can extract from social relationships, friendships, work colleagues around the globe. So oxytocin lets us do this.
Yeah. So we can joke about hugging and about hippies and everything, but can we use oxytocin to improve our lives or even society?
Yeah, I think one of the really exciting pieces of research is that oxytocin release makes us happy. So if you want to be happier, you need to connect to other people.
Yeah.
And we've shown experimentally that the more you release oxytocin, the easier it is to release. And so what you want to do is train yourself to be a better connector, a more connected human being. You live longer, you live happier, and you live healthier.
And how do you do that? How do you connect?
So I think really focusing on, again, not just hugging people, but really focusing on connecting to people, being fully present at the moment. We've shown things like meditation induce more oxytocin release, focusing on people's emotions, just asking them, or as I said in my talk, telling people around them that you love them, right? In the sense of philia. I really care about you as a human being. So the people who work in my lab, I make sure they know that I love them, I care about them, I want them to be successful, and when they're successful, I'm successful. Boom, virtuous cycle.
Yeah. I think we have a clip of that, what you said in your talk about the importance of love and everything. Let's have a look at that clip.
The dividing line between evil and good behavior is oxytocin. It's really the underlying biology of love.
It's very noisy here, so it's hard to understand each other. But you heard Mr. Zak talking about hugs. How many hugs do you do a day?
Well, my wife is there, so...
Okay.
I want to ask you later on something about the autism behavior of humans, and especially children, because they're so self-centered. Right. So maybe they can get sort of help because of these thoughts?
You can. It's interesting that this basic research has spawned a lot of clinical trials for autism, for schizophrenia, for depression. And so there are ways to train the brain to be better at releasing oxytocin, better at connecting. And as I told you earlier on the break, I'm an introvert, and so I actually don't feel a need to connect to people around me, but as I've trained myself to be better at making those connections, I find I have a much happier social life because people really care about me more because I care about them. So it's this nice kind of virtuous cycle.
And does it also work for employers and employees? Can a company be more, can use more oxytocin?
It does. We've been doing a ton of work the last 4 years on companies on measuring trust at the organizational level and actually advising companies on how to build a high trust, high oxytocin workplace. In those workplaces, we see much higher productivity, more engagement by employees, less employee turnover.
Can you give an example
higher
of a
profits. So a great one is Zappos. So we're doing some work with Zappos, and Zappos is a place where people love to come to work. You have a lot of autonomy. You can work with customers any way you want. If you want to order flowers for customers not unhappy, who's unhappy, you can do that. And they really focus on making this the most delightful experience possible for an employee and therefore for the customer.
So it even works on the workplace.
It does work in the workplace. Again, because as human beings, we have this really deep need to socially connect. And so why would you check your human nature at the door when you walk into work, right? Let's use all this for as much as possible. Now, is there still competition to work? For sure. Competition is very valuable. It drives you to be better than you think you might be. So you want that external competition, but internally you want to cooperate.
But then, I mean, our society is changing rapidly. Everybody's watching their screens all day long. I've got an iPad here, a laptop, I've got my mobile phone. I don't look at people anymore, I only look at screens. So it's difficult to connect and difficult to get your oxytocin levels up, I guess.
So there's kind of two approaches. One is I have little children, and so we have no electronics times where we really focus on being fully present.
No electronics time.
No electronics time. So I always say you should also listen with your eyes. So I need to look at you when I'm talking to you, be really present. But second, we've actually done experiments using social media. And it turns out if you tweet, if you Skype, if you email, your brain's still releasing oxytocin. So I can actually look at the amount of oxytocin release and tell you how strong your connection is to the person you're interacting with online. So it still works. So
e-contacts are the same as real life contacts?
Not the same. The real life is a bigger bandwidth, right? I'm getting touch, I'm getting smell, I'm getting all these things. But
in the future we get tactile holograms, so you can touch on a distance via your iPad.
Love that.
So what do you think about that?
We'll go in the right direction.
Absolutely.
I want to conclude this conversation. Thank you very much, and let's give each other a hug, because we need that, right? Come here. Thank you very much. Okay, nou die heb ik binnen, die hug. You should hug as well, of course, huh, Mr. Lamb,